Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. Newfoundland might be a couple of thousand miles from Ireland, but the Irish influence is a strong one in the most eastern part of Canada in terms of people, culture, language and fly fishing. Jamie Pike is a Newfoundlander of Irish descent who's a passionate salmon angler and professional fly tyer. We caught up with Jamie on this week's episode to find out more about fly fishing in Newfoundland and why he also made the long, arduous trek to join the Irish Fly Fair recently. And Tom, before we hear from Jamie, you were at the Irish Fly Fair yourself. How did it go?
Yeah, good man, Tara. Yeah, I got up to it. I was there for the couple of days. Really good show, great atmosphere. It's a pity you couldn't make it up to it. It was just nice. Got to meet a load of people. Got to meet Jamie, which is great. And he mentions it. He touches on it there. You know, the amount of fly tyers that were there, it was just phenomenal. And some of the fly tying skills that were available just to view was just stupendous, like fantastic. So yeah, it was a great old weekend. Really enjoyed it. Really did.
Well done, Stevie and Daryl, for putting together another great show. Fingers crossed they'll make it this time next year or whenever it's on next year after the season. But yeah, so well done, lads. It seems to be growing from strength to strength, and the chance to meet people like Jamie, you know, people from all over the world, and as Jamie describes it in the interview, it's a community of people that come together, and he really appreciated it and really enjoyed it as well. So look, let's hear from Jamie now, I suppose, and we asked him just about how he actually made it from Newfoundland all the way over to Enniskillen.
I'd left St. John's, Newfoundland on Wednesday afternoon and had to fly in the opposite direction. I had to fly west out of Newfoundland to Montreal.
And how long of a flight is that?
It's about 2.5 hours, 2.75 hours. And then I had to hook an overnight flight from Montreal, heading eastbound, flying back over Newfoundland, and then landing in London around 10 a.m. And then I hopped another flight in London to go to Dublin. Right. And then Daryl Mooney from Fishing Matters picked me up there, and then we had a couple-hour drive then from Dublin up to Enniskillen.
So you arrived when in Enniskillen that day?
About 3 weeks later.
Yeah. I got in Enniskillen just after noon.
Oh my God, you must have been wrecked.
Sometime between noon and 2 p.m. on Thursday.
Oh my God, that is fair play to you. Okay. Would you do that kind of trip again?
I'm booked to go to British Fly Fair in February next year, so I'll do it all over again.
Wow. Committed. Tell me this, actually, Jamie. So, you know, have you done a few fly fairs in Canada and North America? And how does it? No, oh, you haven't. Okay, wow, you only do them this time.
We don't really have that sort of event here locally in Newfoundland. We used to have a trade show that was put off by a couple of fellas who had run a magazine publication here, but after the magazine folded during COVID, they didn't keep going with the trade show, and it was more an industry thing. There was a lot of hunting, there was fishing stuff, fly fishing, sea fishing, ATVs, recreational vehicles, stuff like that. The closest, you know, that would be a more similar fly fair would be out in Calgary, and I believe that one's more geared towards the classic fully dressed fly, which is something that I've not yet gone down that route of tying yet. I might later on, but right now I'm happy enough doing what I'm doing. So my first trip away for any sort of event like that was this past February to the British Fly Fair.
I thought you were going to tell us that you're an old hand at going to all the shows around Canada and North America. Yeah.
No. When it comes to fly tying and fly fishing, I don't have a lot of time under my belt. I'd seriously started fly fishing for Atlantic salmon in 2007, while I was going to school to go through a next level of training as a paramedic. One of the guys who was in my class who I'd befriended, he and a couple of his pals were fly fishermen for Atlantic salmon, And he'd asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, geez, I don't have any interest whatsoever in spending hours and hours and hours on a river putting a fly over a fish that isn't going to strike it because it's hungry. I got no interest whatsoever, none. Prior to that, it was sea trout and inland trout for me,
Yeah.
for on the fly. So it was only really since then that I'd seriously been what I would call a fly angler. And it was the following year, 2008, when I started fly tying. I was working as a paramedic in a very small community here in Newfoundland, and one of the other fellows who was on the ambulance roster, he was a fly tyer. And being in such a small community, the call volume was quite low. So the evening times were very long, and he'd given me an old fly kit that he'd had, and he said, here, play around with this. And I wish I had some of the first flies that I tied, because I was tying, like, I tied the full feather on. I had no idea what I was doing. None. And these things, I brought one or two over to him the next day, and he said, my son, you're going to have to sit down, and I'm going to show you, because he said, whatever you've got done there.
He told you it as it was. He didn't he didn't rosy it up or anything.
No. He's not known for rosying anything up. He didn't hold back.
Is that the Newfoundland style?
Oh yeah. yeah.
So was that then the British Fly Fair last year? Was that your first appearance, like live fly tying, so to speak?
Correct. Yeah.
Were you nervous doing it?
Quite nervous.
Yeah,
I was quite nervous. I'm not gonna deny that at all. I mean, when you look at the roster of fly dressers who are at these people, these are world elite fly tyers. People who I followed on Instagram, who are like, they're celebrity fly tyers, and to be sat next to these people on the stage, and one, to be invited, two, to be sat next to these people, you feel damn intimidated. I mean, I can put material on a hook very well, but when you look at some of the creations and the technique and the attention to detail with these fellas, say, Jesus, I'm well outclassed.
And you're obviously holding your own, Jamie. They invited you back, so you're obviously holding your own.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I must say the reception over there was phenomenal. Steve Cooper and Bridget, they'd asked me to do a presentation in the In Focus Theater, so I'd done some staple Newfoundland patterns, and there was people that had traveled several hours to come and see me tie. I was almost embarrassed. It was great. It was absolutely great.
Fair play to you. Tell us what are the kind of staple Newfoundland patterns? So
here in Newfoundland, if we've migrated away from feather wing flies. Years ago, the anglers that were coming in from the United States and from Britain, from Ireland, etc., they would have a more dressed fly, a feather wing, a beautiful married wing fly, and an old straight shank with a catgut eye hook, or a catgut eye return. And the feathers were just so expensive, and Newfoundland has never been known for being a really wealthy province. So we adapted these styles into hair wing style flies. So we'll use, there's moose here in the province in numbers that would almost make your head spin. So a lot of our dark wing flies are tied with moose. Usually the hair off of the side or the lower leg of the moose. For our lighter wing flies, we'll use goat. So it's not uncommon for a fly tyer, excuse me, to go to a farmer who's doing a call of his goats, pick up a young goat, and take the hide and flesh it and tan it, and then use the white goat hair for what we would call our white wing flies. Squirrel is also popular because it was cheap. For the most part, our wet flies, our blue charms, our thunder and lightnings, our green highlanders, they're tied with moose or squirrel.
All products that are ready available.
Correct. Yeah.
and they're to hand. So you
Yeah.
didn't, you didn't have to be buying them in or anything. They were there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And then for our dry flies, bombers are far and above the most popular dry fly style here. And bombers are tied with various colors of calf tail for the tail and the horn, and then the body is spun and trimmed deer belly, which is readily available. Not in Newfoundland, we don't have any deer,
Yeah.
but it's easy to get in and it's cheap.
Mm.
And then there's a palmered hackle down through the body, and the color variations on a bomber are just endless colors. But our bombers here are different than a bomber that you would find fished in Quebec, say on the Gaspé Peninsula. A quote unquote Quebec style bomber still has the calf tail, the deer body, the palmered hackle, but they'll have a split front wing with more hackle towards the front of the fly.
Right. And do you not split the front? Do you not split the front wing?
No.
You just leave a single wing, single post coming out the front.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. Single front horn. Yeah.
Well, tell us actually just about the history and tradition of fly fishing in Newfoundland, and maybe actually just start at the where is Newfoundland, just so people can picture it. And actually, sorry, am I saying it wrong? Is it Newfoundland or I think I call it Newfoundland, but it should be Newfoundland, is it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Newfoundland.
So
okay.
if you were to kind of spell it out, it is Newfoundland, but here locally, it's pronounced Newfoundland. Almost Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So we are Canada's furthest eastern province, and on that province, I live on the far eastern side on what's called the Avalon Peninsula.
So is next up Ireland or Iceland or something, basically?
I would think the closest place as the crow flies would be Iceland.
Yes, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And are you on the same level as Iceland? How far north are you?
Iceland's a little further north.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
cool.
A little further north. Now, if you travel from where I live on the kind of southeastern side of Newfoundland and travel north and west up the northern peninsula, you would be more in line with where Iceland would be.
Right.
Yeah. The roots of our fly fishing here and fishing here, like I mentioned it kind of in a preamble email, a lot of the residents here, their ancestry comes from Britain and Ireland and Northern Ireland. My family as well. Surname of Pike comes from your guys' part of the world. And there's a what we call the Southern Shore, which is about an hour's drive from where I live. It's called the Irish Loop. And if you head down to that part of the province, like I say, it's only an hour and a half, hour and a bit away from where I live. The dialect is very, very heavily Irish. Very heavily Irish.
That's amazing. So you'd actually recognize, you'd hear the strong accent like coming out.
Very much so. Very, very much so. Yeah.
I've actually listened to it. I've Googled it because I'm really interested. I'm fascinated by that whole thing. And if anybody hasn't Googled it, there's heaps of programs. There's an old Irish program, Ryerk, who went there in the 70s. And to hear this, it's like, to be honest, a lot of people from the southeastern part of Ireland, Wexford, South Wicklow, and all of that, and the accent is wow. It's amazing to listen to it.
It is.
And yet I hear little bits of it in your accent as well, though.
Yeah.
There's little bits in there.
Yeah.
Is there any Gaelic over there at all? Was there any?
There are some small groups that will speak Gaelic. Now not so much as yourself, Tom. And I listened to an episode yesterday of yourself and George. And the language is beautiful. I love hearing the back and forth, but I can't understand a single syllable of it.
Neither can I.
But there are people here that do speak that language within their own little group. Yeah,
that's amazing. Wow. That's amazing. So obviously the people who came over, they brought a bit of fly fishing legacy, I suppose. Is that what we're sort of fishing, and then did it develop into the fly fishing side of things?
Yeah. So when Newfoundland was first discovered by John Cabot, he'd gone ashore in the 1500s in a small community that I grew up in called Harbor Grace. Harbor Grace is a little over an hour away from where I live now. And the reason for the journey was to find some newfound land. And when they got here, the coastal areas were just absolutely teeming with codfish. Teeming with codfish. You can go back into the annexes, and it's recorded that when he was making his way close to shore, the codfish were so thick that it slowed the progress of his ship. Now, we're long since past that now, sadly. But that's what the reason for the exploration was to find new trade, new opportunity. And he came ashore here, and shortly thereafter, more people just followed his route, and it built up from here. If you look at Newfoundland's settlements on a map, the inland portions are much less settled. Everything is right around the coast. All the coves and bays and estuaries, those are the places that are mostly settled. The inland part, of course, the Trans-Canada Highway kind of bisects the entire province, and there are some inland communities, but they're newer communities per se than the coastal ones.
And what's the climate like? Is it harsh winters, or is it mild like Ireland? Or
no, it gets brutally cold here in the winter. It's -6 degrees Celsius here this morning, and it'll get a hell of a lot colder than that. We'll get lots of snow. On the eastern part of the province, you tend to get a more mild climate. It could be -15 on Monday, and Tuesday it could be -2, and you have 1.5 feet of snow. And on Wednesday it could be 12 degrees and pouring rain. Okay. It's a very unstable. It's terrible if you don't like a runny nose. On the eastern side, it's certainly the weather patterns are a lot more sporadic and mixed than the western side. You go to the western side of the province, the people that live over there, they say, "Oh, best coast, west coast." You get hot summers. You get cold winters. You don't get a lot of the sloppy snow stuff that we get here on the East Coast. And then when you go north, it's more of the same. Really hot summers sometimes, and really cold and lots of snow in the wintertime.
Wow. So do you batten down the hatches now for the next few months?
Well, our fishing season, it's stopped here now in October. So we won't have any fishing here until the winter fishing season opens on the 1st of February. And a lot of that will be anglers going out and ice fishing. The very brave, and I mean the very brave, will go to the brackish water if it's not frozen over, and have a try for some sea trout. But those can be terrible, terrible days.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking well out further into the summer for, again, proper fishing, May, June?
Yeah, our spring trout, summer trout season opens on the 15th of May. And even that time in the province, some of the northern parts, the lakes and the rivers will still have ice on them. Yeah.
It's a beautiful place, because I've actually, once again, as you do with YouTube, I've fallen down a rabbit hole once. There's a guy, Justin Barber.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've watched all his YouTube of kayaking across. Well, he does a lot of Labrador, but he does quite a bit of Newfoundland. Better say it right.
Yeah.
As well, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely. It's actually the ones that he does, and if anybody wants to get a look at it, it's fantastic to see what the interior is like. And there's not a lot of people there, is there?
No. He's gone through some remote areas. I've watched all his videos. He's an amazing young man.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Brilliant young man. He was a very, very talented hockey player. And yeah, he was.
That why he's no teeth, is it?
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
And then he branched out into, if you look at his early videos, he done a trek across the southern shore that I was telling you about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That Irish loop
I haven't
area.
seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the very first ones he did. And he did another one from a community called Trepassey, which is right at the very southern tip of the southern shore, and came north.
Ah.
Yeah, his videos are phenomenal, and he shows the province so well.
It does. It really does.
Yeah,
Anybody who wants to have a look at it, it's a really good way of
yeah,
getting to see what
yeah.
the whole province is like.
Yeah, no, he does a great job. And recently, he's done some very lengthy ones. He's gone up, well up in the Labrador and
Mm.
traversed the whole part of Labrador and right down through Newfoundland, right back to the East Coast.
Oh,
Where,
right.
oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah, it's unbelievable what that young man's done. Yeah,
Is tourism big, or what's the main economy there?
tourism is definitely big here. The staple for Newfoundland would be oil.
Oh,
We have a
right.
lot of offshore oil development. We used to have an oil refinery here as well, but ownership had transferred over, and now it does like a biofuel type thing. But yeah, oil exploration and tourism would be the big things here. Yeah.
So tell us about the fly fishing. Is it mainly rivers that you do, coastal? What? Tell me about that.
There's quite the mix here. If you look at Newfoundland on a map, if you go on Google Earth and just scan the province, there's endless waterways.
Yeah, yeah.
We have 186 scheduled Atlantic salmon rivers. And a scheduled river is an Atlantic salmon river that you need a license to fish on.
Right.
An unscheduled river, again, there's hundreds of unscheduled rivers. You don't need a license as a local. You don't need a fishing license to fish those rivers. If you hook a salmon on it, you have to let it go. And then you have all the brackish estuaries. On the East Coast, we have sea run brook trout and sea run brown trout. As you go west, they don't have brown trout further west. If you go north, you'll get a little mixture of Arctic char on the island part of the province, and you go up into Labrador, and there's a heck of a lot of Arctic char up in Labrador. In the big deep water in Labrador, you'll also get lake trout. There's pike. There's a sucker fish up in Labrador as well. Yeah, it's a weird looking bottom feeding fish. It's almost like a guppy, like what you would see in a fish tank, only 3, 4, 5 pounds. And then they also have the brook trout. You won't get brown trout in Labrador. There are landlocked salmon. Those would be an Atlantic salmon that migrated from the sea and either got landlocked because of something that was man-made, a diversion of water, or it could be beavers that had dammed off a small river. Yeah.
What's the salmon run like at the moment? Obviously, has it been like everywhere else where it's just starting to decrease badly?
Well, you know what? When I'd hooked onto your show a couple of weeks ago, the first show I listened to was the one where Daryl Mooney praised me up to the high heavens, and I'll say it on the air, he was paid well for that. After that, I'd gone right back to the premiere episode, and I started listening to every single one. The content is fantastic. I love it, and a lot of these characters that you guys have on the show are echoing the same challenges that we have here, and you can almost see a lot of the same trends. These last 2 years here for Atlantic salmon have been absolutely abysmal. Last year, we had a heat wave, water temperatures, 26, 27 degrees, extremely low water. This past summer, the same thing, really low water, really high temperatures. Water temperatures hitting, mid to high 20s are not good for salmon survival, not good for trout survival, but salmon in particular. I'd gone on a trip towards the end of July with a couple of buddies up in the Labrador, and we fished a river called the Eagle River, a very prolific Atlantic salmon river. I've gone to this river numerous times over the years and hooked embarrassing numbers of fish. And over 5 days this past summer, I'd only had 15 fish. Those same 5 days in 2018 or 2017, it was near 100 fish.
Wow.
Hooked.
So even in those 5 years, like.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
only 5
Because
years.
the funny thing is,
Wow.
Jamie, you said 15 fish across a week. In Ireland,
Mhm.
Scotland, you'd be like, I'd be biting your hand off for a ratio of that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but to put it in context, you're saying 100 normally. Like.
Yeah. This last year was really odd. We never had a drop of rain, not a drop of rain from mid July right up to September. These river levels went from like this river, the Eagle River,
Mm.
prime fishing conditions on that river would be around, I'm not sure how you guys scale your rivers there, but we use cubed meters of flow.
Mm.
I like fishing that river when it's flowing around 275 cube meters, which is fairly high, but
Mm.
there's so many fish there and they take savagely. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. When we were there this year, it started out around 275, and in just a handful of days after we'd left, it had been down under 200 cube meters, and it just kept dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. That river in August was flowing around 30 cube meters.
Wow.
It was terrible.
And those
Terrible.
bare
And
bones.
it's a big it's a big river. It's a big wide river. Like you navigate the pools with in a boat. You can get out and walk and wade areas, but from bank to bank in the section that we fish, it's almost 300 meters across. So it's a damn big river. But this year they didn't have any snow really to start it off. So the high water that you get in April and into May after the spring breakup, that wasn't there at the beginning of the season. The water was certainly higher, but it wasn't what is typical for that river. And then with the lack of rain, that water that was running off from many kilometers back into backcountry, it ran off quick, and there was nothing coming behind it to keep the water level up. It was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Here on the island, I'd started keeping a detailed fishing diary, and we have close to 20 rivers on the island that have counting fences. So I'd record every time the government would update the counting fence. I'd record it in my diary, and things started out okay, but the catch rates were really down. You were looking at the number of returning fish. The number of returning fish were ahead of 2023, but the anglers were saying, geez, I'm after trying every fly in the box. The fish aren't porpoising. They're not jumping and showing the way they typically do. They were just they were sailing on through. It was almost like they knew something was going to happen. By mid-July, these big target rivers that we have in the province, one is in central Newfoundland called the Exploits. By mid-July, that river, the two values, they started to get closer together from last year and this year, and then it started to drop off. And the Exploits finished with over 10,000 fish less than last year.
So you're not hopeful for 2025 in the future? Like,
I mean, it's, as a salmon angler, you're ever hopeful. You're ever hopeful.
True.
That's a recurring theme on this show.
Yeah, you're ever hopeful, and you look to say, oh well, this year was this reason, oh it was that reason, and oh maybe next year it's this, and maybe we'll see that. But the trend has certainly been on the decline.
What's the average size of the fish, and have you noticed the size getting smaller as well?
Most of our rivers here, again going back to the history of salmon fishing here, there was a commercial fishery here for a long time, and I'm talking back in the late 1800s, coming into the 1900s. Fishers would set nets across the whole length of the river. So right at the tidal water, there'd be a net from bank to bank, high mark to high mark. 20 meters up from that, there'd be another net. 20 meters up from that would be another net. So the big salmon tended to end up in a barrel. So if you look at the average size of fish, most of the fish that come into rivers here are grills. So we determine a grills based on size, and if it's a second return fish. an average size grill's, 4.5, 5 pounds. You'll get the odd one that's right on our size limit for retention of 63 centimeters. It could be 6.5 pounds. Up into Labrador on the Eagle. The Eagle's well known for some very large grills. A limit grills on the Eagle River could be pushing 7 pounds.
Can I ask you actually, genetically, your salmon, they are the same as, let's say, we call them European Atlantic salmon. I presume, yeah. Do they go to the same areas off of Greenland, or are there different areas that they go to, or do we know this?
Well, there's an awful lot of discussion around that, Tom. There's a group here on the eastern part of the province called the Salmon Association of Eastern Newfoundland. There's a member there who said not all salmon, and again, I don't know where this information was gathered from, but he said not all Atlantic salmon will leave the rivers and go back to Greenland. He said some of these Atlantic salmon, they stay in the estuaries all year long. That's as far as they migrate.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, we do have salmon that have been tagged, radio tagged, and have traveled back to Greenland, but not every Atlantic salmon that leaves our rivers over in the spring will go to Greenland. Yeah.
Once again, I find life as salmon is so fascinating. What makes one stay in the estuarine waters, and what makes another one go all the way to Greenland? When you think about it, they're just such an amazing creature. Just an amazing creature. Yeah.
It sounds cliche to say it, but it is.
It's nature just having all its safeguards in place.
Yeah.
If something happens out there, we don't want to be completely wiped out. In the same way, like the brown trout, they spawn in different rivers.
Yeah.
They protect themselves all the time. And and I think it's fascinating as well. I think it was Ken Whelan talk. He was telling me like how not all the salmon who spawn in that go back to the same river where they spawned, where they were born, because just to be safe, what if that river is wiped out? Some of them will, for whatever reason, they will go to another river. Yeah. And it is absolutely amazing. Tell me this, Jamie. You reluctantly became a salmon angler. How did the conversion come about? Because you were pretty definite about you had no interest in it.
I'd been a sea trout fisher, fly angler for many, many years since I was a boy. And this night, it was after school, and my buddy said, "Come on, we're going. Take a couple of beer with you." He said, "If you don't like it, just sit down and you can drink your beer, you can drink my beer. You'll be fine." So I'd had an old setup. My trout setup was too lightweight to use for Atlantic salmon. He said, "Oh, you need a 9-foot, you need a 7 weight." I had a 10-4 or a 10-5, and he said, "No, don't take that." He said, "The fish will snap that off." So we went out. I grabbed this old, I want to say it was like a Berkeley something or other fiberglass setup, and I haven't even really looked at it. I went down to the local gas station, picked up some salmon flies, and they were big. They were really big flies. They were size 2, size 4s. We get down to the river, and I noticed that the line was on the reel backwards. So I had to reel backwards. So I'm fishing, and one of the more experienced anglers were there. He said, "Jesus," he said, "what are you like?" I just didn't know what I was doing. So he hooks the fish in very short time. Hooks the fish. He hands me the rod. The first thing I do is start reeling backwards with his kit. So then there's poof, all his line pops out on the reel like a bird's nest. So he's cursing me up in the high heavens. This fish is out in the river going absolutely bananas. We peel off the line. I start reeling properly, and I land the fish. About 2 hours later, it's, the bewitching hour where if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. We're fishing a big hitched silver doctor, and I'm casting out, and you feel like a thump on the line. I couldn't see the fly as well as what I can now, just not used to it. And I said, "Geez," I said, "I'm getting a bite." He said, "What do you mean you're getting a bite?" He said, "You're getting a rise or something like that." I said, "No," I said, "Every time the fly comes across the side of that rock, I can feel a thump on the line." He said, "Cast back again." I said, "I can't see the damn fly." So I cast out, and it starts to come across, and the water went like a washing machine underneath the fly. He said, Jesus, pull back. And I'm, of course, being a trout angler, predominantly you're waiting to feel the fish before you actually lift and set the hook. So the fly comes across again. The fish takes it. He said, as soon as the water moves under the fly, raise the rod, set the hook. So of course I did so. Very first night I was fishing, I had 2 salmon. I went the whole rest of that season, never touched the fish. I went the whole rest of the next year, never hooked the fish. So I'd left the river that night thinking that I was a rock star, and I found out very, very quickly that you are not.
But you were hooked, though.
I was oh, absolutely. I'd like to have the money back now that I'm after sinking into it.
Yeah, you could have packed it in after that night.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, 2 for 2. I'm done.
This is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll try something else.
Yeah, that was the start of Atlantic salmon fishing for me.
And so, would you get out much during the season, like?
This past year, I did not. I try and get out as often as I can. The closest river to me here from my home is about an hour and a half's drive. So it is a bit of a trek to get there. It's, again, I live close to the most densely populated part of the province, so it's not uncommon for somebody to get up at 2:00 in the morning and head to the river and be there well before daylight, and you get there and you can just kind of see the faint glow of the headlamps in the distance, and so it is a bit of a trek. So when I go, I try and go at a time when I'm not going to be in competition for any of the water. And like I'd mentioned, all of our water here is public access. I was just going to ask you that there are no private waters, no? There's no private water in Newfoundland or Labrador. It doesn't matter how prestigious the camp is, or the outfit, or the lodge. If an angler can get to it, he or she is permitted to fish it. Right. And there's pros and cons to that. I certainly don't want to go down the political discussion of what my opinion is, because I'll be land-based here locally. But it is nice to know that, if I make up my mind and say, okay, you know what, me and a couple of my pals, we're going to leave here and we're going to go fish the Gander River in Central. Well, I know I can fish every inch of that water and not have to worry about having to pay a day rate to a club, or it's, exclusive access to ABC outfitters.
Is the flip side of that then poaching? Is that a problem?
It is, yeah. It is. I don't know if it's the biggest challenge that's facing Atlantic salmon here locally. I think, in recent years, it's been climate. Seals are way out of control here. There's between 8 and 10 million seals of varying species all around the province.
Jesus.
Wow, 8 to 10 million.
8 to 10 million. There used to be a seal fishery here, a commercial seal fishery, and we exported products. But with the advent of the European Union, because this is where a lot of the seal products went, the seal fur products predominantly, and a lot of it was bad publicity. Like you're not hunting these seals typically in open water. You're hunting them during the winter time when they're on the ice. You shoot an animal.
I remember the videos.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, they didn't look great.
It portrays it very poorly. It does. I'm a seal fisher here, and the process that you have to go through to harvest the seal here, it's very, very highly regulated. The old days of, when you see somebody clubbing a young white coat seal on virgin white ice, those days are long gone. But sadly, the effect of that is not. So the seal population here has gone way, way out of control, And none of these seals are vegetarians. They're all eating fish.
They're all eating fish.
And decreasing numbers of fish, yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the rivers on our west coast called the Humber River, it's a place that I venture to typically the end of June. A number of years back, from the mouth of the river where it empties into the ocean to where I was fishing was about 20 kilometers in length. Two sets of falls that this seal had to go through. This seal chased Atlantic salmon, and it was a damn big seal. He was probably close to 300 pounds. He'd gone all the way up through the lower river, through a great big long lake that's like 10 kilometers long, through the upper section of the river, and up two sets of falls to where we were fishing. And
Wow.
It was unbelievable where these creatures will go.
Wow.
There has to be something done about the population of seals here. And again, I mean, getting away from the negative light that the fishery is portrayed in. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how the government's going to do it. But we have to do something about the seals. Poaching, again, you'll hear every single year, you'll hear of this river or that river was poached. And when I say poached, it's not only somebody, sinking a fly and foul hooking a salmon and hauling it in, putting a net across the river, going to a rest pool where the salmon are holding up before a leap and just dragging a net through it. And I mean, I can only put it down to ignorance. People just think that these fish are going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back.
It's universal, isn't it, Jamie? You have it in Ireland, you have it all over the world.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have it everywhere. Unfortunately, Jamie, I just wouldn't mind changing again, swinging it back because we discussed it earlier a bit about the fly tying. Kind of interested. I'm sure a lot of guys would be interested in. Right, the patterns you use. You switch to hair wing, but judging that most of your fishing is June, are we looking at smaller hair wing patterns? What's your general size? We'll discuss the bombers later, but like your normal, let's say, pulling patterns or down and across patterns.
Most of the time, if you see somebody fishing here, they're going to be fishing either a size 6, size 8, or size 10. Those are the three sizes that are most popular. I'm a commercial fly tyer here. Those are the three sizes that I get requested far and above. Absolutely, those would be the three most popular.
And they're the ones. And can I just ask, is that single barbless, double barbless, or what's the common hook?
You're only allowed to use single and barbless here. So you have to have the barb crushed when you're fishing. You haven't got to have the barb crushed when it's in your fly box, but when it's on your line and you're fishing, you have to have the barb crushed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll also tie. I'll tie if I'm tying a size range for a local fly shop here. I'll tie size 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12 in a pattern.
In the range, but the predominant ones that they'll sell will be the 6, 8, and 10s.
6, 8, and 10. Yeah. If I was to say to you, if you were to say to me, Jamie, I'm coming over in June, what patterns, what sizes? I'd give you a dozen patterns, and I'd say have them in size 6, 8, and 10.
Right. Okay. And is it kind of similar to here? You'd have lighter dress patterns for when the water is low, heavier dressed and bigger when it's running heavy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you'll even get the odd angler, like when the fish get sulky here. Sometimes if you mix it up, like I've fished low water here, where low and warm water, where we're fishing our regular, say, hair wing blue charm tied on a size 10 trout hook. So a very small fly, and they won't touch it. And I'll say, you know what? I'm going to mix this up now. Pull that in, tie on a size, like a big size 4 salmon single, put a couple of half hitches on the head, skate it across the pool, and the fish will go wild for it. That doesn't happen every time, but you
got to be prepared to try it. Just
absolutely, yeah.
And also the bombers. You remember that, Dara? Was it a Paddy that was telling us about the bombers and one of the reasons he had why the bombers aren't so successful in Ireland? The Paddy McDonald. Remember that came up in one of the shows. I'll have to check that again. But because we don't use bombers much here.
Yeah.
No, we don't. But you use them quite a bit, do you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
unfortunately I've never had any luck with them myself. Anytime I have, but I've seen the videos. The takes just look absolutely fantastic.
You'll once you get proficient with the presentation of a bomber and you get salmon come up for a dry fly, it's extremely hard to tie on a wet fly. A salmon doesn't they don't sip a bomber whatsoever. Sometimes sometimes a salmon will go so aggressively after a bomber, the whole fish could be out of the water. It's just wild, absolutely wild. Yeah, yeah, very
What's
explosive.
actually just a matter of interest? What size do you dress the bombers in?
Again, if I'm tying commercially, size 2 down to size 10.
Size
And
two. Size
size
two.
2, yeah.
Sure, that's not a fly. That's a rodent.
Yeah, yeah, damn big flies. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they work so bloody well here.
Does the riffled hitch work as well?
The riffle hitch was actually created here. So
Yeah.
just to
Wow.
touch on that, years back when anglers were coming from the United States and Britain, and with the catgut eye flies, the local guides, after that eye broke, they'd pick up the fly and put it in their pocket. Being Newfoundlanders, you're always looking for, reuse and repurpose. So the guides started tying half hitches on the heads of these flies that were discarded by the anglers, and it changes the presentation completely. It takes the fly, turns it from being perpendicular to the water to parallel, so the disturbance that it creates coming across the surface. Again, the salmon take these hitched flies the same way almost as they take a bomber. They don't sip a hitched fly at all. They strike it, and they're striking it very aggressively, very, very aggressively. So when I tie my wet flies, I'll move the head of my fly back. So when I finish it off, the most forward part of the head of the fly is just on the return of the hook. So that allows the angler then to put a couple of half hitches forward of the head. Some fellas will half hitch directly on the head of the fly, but what happens then when you get down into the smaller leader sizes, the tension on the leader can really pull tight on the head of the fly, and soft, like this goat here that we use. It's very, very soft, and it doesn't take much for a small 6-pound leader to get tight and stretch and then cut that off. So I leave room forward of the head for the angler to hitch their fly there.
And again, similar in Ireland, it's not done. It's not. And I think the experience of people, it hasn't worked. I think I've heard the same at Scotland as well. It's interesting. It's kind of a case of maybe, do you need more people to try it, to do it, to get it to work more, or
I guarantee you it'd work.
Yeah.
I guarantee it'd work. Yeah. I'd love to.
There's a host of listeners now. They're right. That's it.
Yeah.
2025. I'm trying it.
Yeah. Bombers and hitch flies. That'll be your 2025.
There you go. Jamie, tell us, your flight tying career has really taken off. You work with different brands. Tell us a bit about how the commercial side of it really took off for you.
So both myself and my wife were paramedics here in the city of St. John's. I've been tying flies since late 2007, early 2008, and then when COVID happened, like everywhere, it just changed so many things here. We ended up very early in the COVID pandemic exposed. Back when nobody really knew what was going to happen. We were here, locked in the house. We didn't know if we were going to live or die. We didn't have it, thankfully, but we were exposed and we were waiting to see what was going to happen. And, we were very nervous, very anxious about it. And I turned to fly tying. I sat down and I just started tying more flies, and I'd post it up on Facebook. I never had an Instagram account. And people just started messaging, "Oh, can you tie me a dozen of this? Can you tie me 2 dozen of that?" The first year of COVID, so 2020 is when it kind of hit here. I think I tied and sold somewhere around 3,000 flies during that year.
Wow.
And then the year after, almost doubled again.
Oh my God.
And for 2023, 2020, and 2024, I've tied and sold each year about 7,000 flies.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
incredible. It's a lot.
Can I ask you, Jamie, because years ago I did tie flies professionally. How do you find with sitting down and knowing ahead of you that, say, you have to tie 2 or 3 dozen of the same pattern. How
So
are you
what
with
I
that?
do, Tom, I'll show you what I've got here.
Mm.
So I don't tie commercially start to finish. I'll tie all my flies in sections. So
Right. Yeah.
I have these containers, and each one of these slots has 36 fly bodies in it.
Right.
So I'll
Yeah.
sit down, and rather than tie, a dark wing blue charm start to finish, I'll tie it up to the point where I have to tie the wing in the throat. Couple of half
Right.
hitches, toss it in the bin.
So you'll have in that box there, the compartments, you could have blue charm with just the body, all done, ready to go on and put in the throat and the wing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. That's the only way to do it. It
Yeah.
keeps my tying section relatively tidy. You don't have all the materials out.
Yeah.
Now with the smaller orders, like if a client comes to me and says, I want, 3 dozen flies, chances are he doesn't want 3 dozen blue charms. It'll be a mix and match.
Yeah.
But again, I'll take stock of what I have to tie for the whole year. And if you order blue charms and Daryl orders blue charms and Daryl orders blue
Yeah.
charms, I have my order book on one side. And when I get the bodies for yours done, I'll put a little check mark next to the body and then kind of work my way down through it. It's the only way to do it, really. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate
Yeah.
enough
Makes
that,
sense.
yeah, the job I have now, I'm fortunate enough that on weekends and night shifts, I'm able to tie a few flies while I'm at work as well. So it works out okay.
You obviously love it to be tying that amount.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, you try and explain it to somebody and they say, my geez, like I don't have the discipline to sit down and do it. How do you do it? But I find when I get to the fly tying vice, it's almost like you go into the river and you almost sound like you're foolish trying to explain it to somebody. I'll sit down, I'll dump out 3 dozen, size 6 hooks, and a couple hours will pass. I'll put a podcast on, I'll put something on in the background, listen and just tie, and you get completely lost in it. Completely lost in it.
Wow.
And I hope it never becomes so much that I don't lose that.
From being to the British Fly Fair and the Irish Fly Fair, have you learned stuff? Have you seen a lot of different kind of styles, meeting the Irish fly tyers, the UK fly tyers? Is there distinct styles that you kind of admire and learn from?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all putting stuff on a hook. But
That's the Newfoundland way of saying things. That's pretty straight.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're all putting stuff on a hook. But everybody doesn't get to the end result the same way. And it's I sat next to the same two fellas at the Irish Fly Fair this year as I did at the British Fly Fair. Siggy Grunderson out of Iceland and Tim Wood out of Britain. And just watching these two fellas tie was great. You're in an intimate setting there. They're watching what I'm doing, I'm watching what they're doing, and just little tips and tricks. And you get up, you make your way around the table, you watch some other fly tyers put the material to the hook and say, oh geez, well, I do that a little differently. Why do you do it that way? And say, okay, well, because of this. I was like, well, perfect. It's so nice to be in that community of artists and just sit down and watch somebody tie a pattern that I tie.
Yeah, and it is really, I've always said this, it is so beneficial to watch other people at the craft because,
Absolutely.
as you say, they might just do something different. And, sometimes the way you do things quite good, but, next thing you'll see and you go, wow, that's a great way of doing that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, when you look at the fly dressers who you would consider, the elite in the trade, their flies are consistent, and they're consistent for a reason. The heads of the flies are a certain size, be it, smaller for a salmon fly. They're proportionally correct for a reason. And when you watch somebody do it, picking up a little tip or a trick here and there, once you think you've got it all learned, you got it all figured out, fire it all away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Never
Yeah.
think that. Never
Yeah.
think that. Yeah. No, that's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I could stay talking for ages, but listen, we're going to wrap it up now. But just before you go, and as you've listened to a couple of podcasts, you know what's coming next.
Oh,
We
yeah.
ask everybody, we ask everybody who's been on, what has been your most memorable fish on the fly?
Well, there's two. There's two fish, or
Great.
two times in particular. The first one isn't a fish that I caught. Is my only daughter. I'd taken her to a river in central Newfoundland that I've been fishing for a number of years. It's a busy river. It's kind of got a reputation for being tough to fish because of the crowds that get there. I wasn't fishing myself. You know, she's only 8 years of age at the time. I had her stood in front of me and I said, okay, you know, do this with your arm and let the fly sit on the water. The water moves fast enough that it straightens out the fly line. You don't have to be an accomplished fly caster to fish this area. 8 years of age, she hooked her first salmon and landed it, and it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. She cried, she laughed, she did it all. And the crowd that was around us, they pulled in their fly lines. They let her have full run of the pool. Everybody was helping her. Oh, keep the line tight, pull your arm up, my darling, turn this way, let dad do this. It was unbelievable. And that day, she landed that fish. She hooked and landed 3 more fish in about an hour and a half's time after that. And I said, my geez, we gotta move out of here now because we're going to be drove out of it. So she said, Dad, I'm cold anyway. Can we go get some hot chocolate? So we went into the local coffee shop. We got some hot chocolate and a muffin. We went back to the river and she hooked 4 more fish. 8 years of age, July 7th, 2017, she hooked 8 fish. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And she's gone back to the river with me many times since and not hooked fish.
No. So
it was unreal.
She was like you with your first time, even better than you the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The exact same as you.
Yeah, apples and gravity.
Yeah.
The second fish, the story's not going to paint me in very good light. I was working in Labrador and was fishing for a few hours after work every night. And I'd gone to this river. There was 4 fellas or 5 fellas there fishing this section of river. Every one of the pools were taken up. The flies there, the mosquitoes are horrendously bad in Labrador. Horrendously bad. And they're all starved to death. So I get to the river. I had a fly net on and I had some bug dope in my pocket. And I was watching this fella fishing, and he'd cast and he'd, bat the flies away from his face. He'd cast and bat the flies away. And I said, geez, that fella's not going to be there very long. I'm soon going to have an opportunity. So he turned around and he said, young fella, have you got any fly dope on you? And I told him a lie. And I hope he gets to hear this. I told him a lie and I said, no. But I said, if you go up to my truck, the keys are in the gas cap. There's a box of fly dope on the back. You're welcome to it. He said, feck that. He made a big whistle. He waved his arm, and they all left at the same time. I said, now, I'm in for it. I'm going to fall down now. I'm going to break my leg. I'm going to break my arm. I'm going to fall into something.
Karma.
Something's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So I was waiting for karma to come by. Those fellas, they weren't left the riverbank, not 5 minutes, and I had the first salmon on. 8 or 9 pounds, beautiful, beautiful fish. Towards the end of that evening, I'd seen a very large fish play in an area where the fish only hole there when the water's extremely high. I was fishing a very large blue charm, a number 4 blue charm, with a white wing. I cast out, the fly came in across this rock. And the rock was only a foot and a half off the riverbank. The water went alive under the fly. I set the hook, and the fish jumped directly out of the river, in onto the bank. 2 seconds, and it was and the fight was over. I laid my rod and reel down. It was a brand new, beautiful loop rod and reel. Well, I laid it down, stupidly, and I had to walk in around this little cove. And when I was in no man's land, I was, halfway there. The fish goes back into the river. The rod and reel starts sliding down over this rock. So I'm rushing back to pick up the rod and reel before it ends up down the river. Picked up the rod and reel. Fish was still on. I ended up landing that fish, and it was 100 centimeters.
Ooh.
Yeah. I got one photo of the fish. I think I sent it to you. The fish was 100 centimeters. And that's just the story that goes along with that fish, telling a dirty lie to some innocent angler. It was,
well, obviously,
it was a night I'm not proud of it, but it was a night I'll never forget.
I want to know again, what's the opposite of karma?
Jeez.
Revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, dumb luck.
Well,
dumb luck is the opposite of karma.
I tell you, I don't know about you, Tom. I would have done the same myself if I meant.
I think that's the way yeah. Well, to be honest, I always have the flight open the back of the car. It's the best place for
it. Yeah.
Well done. Oh, well done. Well, the salmon gods were obviously looking down kindly on you, Jamie. So you obviously deserve that. Yeah, you deserve that fish. If people want to follow you to see some more of the flies that you tie, what are you on Instagram?
On Instagram, my handle is the Perfect Presentation NL, and Facebook, I have a personal page, just my name, Jamie Pike. And I also have my business page, The Perfect Presentation, on Facebook.
Brilliant. So if people are looking for flies and some inspiration and fly tying advice, they can get in touch as well, I'm sure. And if you're looking to go to Newfoundland for some fishing, which sounds absolutely incredible. I am a guide here. I'm not what I would call a professional guide. I do carry a guide's license here. But I've certainly got some industry connections. If anybody's looking for advice on who to speak to, I can certainly point them in the right direction. Yeah. You never know. I might see you out there sometime. Jamie, it's been brilliant chatting to you. Thanks a million for joining us. Honored to be here. Honored to be part of it. Thank you so much. Our thanks to Jamie for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review, and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.